Hare Krishna. So, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. We'll continue our study. So, we are looking at this book On the Way to Krishna, and we are in the second chapter. The first chapter we saw last week on the last session, we saw about happiness. What is actually happiness? So, the Srila Prabhupada writes that everyone is looking for happiness, but there are different degrees of happiness to which a person aspires to. So, we saw different levels of consciousness. And according to that, people get happiness. But Srila Prabhupada says, what is ultimate happiness? Sukham aityantikam yat. We want aityantik sukh, ultimate, eternal happiness. So for that, one has to go beyond the body because the body is temporary. Definitely the amount of happiness it's going to give you is temporary. So Srila Prabhupada presents that, the mind is always craving after happiness in this, happiness in that, searching here, searching there. And therefore, it is like a horse which is guiding a chariot but running in all different directions. Srila Prabhupada says, ultimately, we should repose our desire for happiness in that supreme eternal Lord. Because the Lord is eternal, we as souls are eternal, our relationship is eternal, and therefore what we'll get? Eternal happiness. So very interesting. So second chapter, which is called The Way of Chanting and Knowing Krishna. So let us begin. Prabhupada starts. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This is transcendental sound vibration. It will help us to cleanse the dust from the mirror of the mind. At the present moment, we have accumulated so much material dust on the mirror of the mind, just as on 2nd Avenue in New York City, there is dust and soot over everything due to heavy traffic. So this is interesting. Srila Prabhupada wrote this book in the early 1970s, 1960s, maybe late 1960s, 1969. So this is the first center in ISKCON in New York City, 22nd, 2nd Avenue. And Prabhupada is relating, there's so much dirt from dust. So similarly, our mind is also covered by this dust. And actually, this is the beginning of the Shikshastakam by Sriman Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Cheto Dharpana Marjanam. So let us read ahead. Due to our manipulation of material activities, a great deal of dust has collected over our mind's clear mirror. And as a consequence, we are unable to see things in perspective. So why has dust accumulated on our mind? It's because of our manipulation of material activities, meaning when we enjoy in different phases of matter, our mind is becoming contaminated. This vibration of transcendental sound, the Hare Krishna mantra, will cleanse away this dust and enable us to see clearly our real constitutional position. So the chanting of Hare Krishna mantra is like that sound vibration. You can imagine, if you have a speaker system at home, a woofer, subwoofer, sound system, and when you blast the sound, and the speaker may be collecting dust, but suddenly when the sound blasts, all the dust particles kind of vibrates and lifts off. So similarly, this Hare Krishna chanting, transcendental sound vibration, has a transcendental effect to purify the mind. As soon as we come to understand, I am not this body, I am spirit soul, and my symptom is consciousness, right? We will be able to establish ourselves in real happiness. As our consciousness is purified by the process of chanting Hare Krishna, all our material miseries will disappear. So material miseries are usually caused because of our identification with matter. Matter is miserable. So to the degree that we identify with this body, to the degree we identify with whatever designations of this body and the condition we are in, there'll always be miseries. But to the degree that we understand that we are part and parcel of Krishna, eternal spirit soul, material miseries slowly disappear. Prabhupada gives an analogy. There is a fire that is always blazing over this material world, and everyone is trying to extinguish it. Like the morning prayers in our Mangalarti in ISKCON temple, Samsara Dava Nalali Dhaloka. The whole world is like a blazing forest fire. Everyone is trying to extinguish it in different ways. Some people think that if I get a job, I'll extinguish the fire. Some people think if I get, a lot of money, I will actually extinguish the fire. This and that people are trying. But there is no possibility of extinguishing the fire of miseries of material nature unless we are situated in our pure consciousness in our spiritual life. So this whole material world, everyone is endeavoring so much, trying to find happiness. There's a nice, interesting prayer by Prahlad Maharaj. If you see my screen here, I'm sharing in the 7th canto of 9th chapter. He summarizes what this material world is. This material world is Yasmat Priya Apriya Viyoga Sanyoga Janma Shokagnina Sakala Yonisu Dhayamana. Shokagnina Sakala Yonisu Dhayamana. Everyone in this world is being fried by Shokagni, the fire of lamentation. Everyone is miserable. They're being fried. Why? This material world is nothing but a permutation and combination of these 4 things. Priya, apriya, liking and dislike, likes and dislike. Viyoga, viyoga means separation. Sanyoga means joining. So 4 conditions we have, 4 permutation combination. When you get something you like, that is one condition. Or when you get something you don't like. Sanyoga priya, sanyoga apriya. Or when you get something when you don't get something you like, vinyoga priya, then you get sad. Or when we are happy, when we don't get something we don't like, right? So this way, priya, apriya, viyoga, sanyoga, this permutation and combination, that's all life is. Sometimes we get what we want, sometimes we don't get what we want. In that way, we're just happy and sad, happy and sad. Then he continues to say, dukkha aushadam tat api dukkham atat dhyanam. So the solution to dukkham, the medicine, aushadhi, to dukkham is even more miserable. Trying to counteract problems in this material world using our own material intelligence is even more miserable, right? Like people are tired of walking, so they created cars. Now with the pollution, people are getting sick. Atat diyaham, because we are identifying with this body. Guman brahmami vada me tavadase yogam. We just have to keep cycling in this material world. So very interesting about this nature of this material world being like a fire, right? The thing is, we don't realize we're kind of happy in this fire. Proper jokes, people are so lazy. It's like one time he says 2 men were in a house and the house caught fire and they were sleeping and the fire blazed so much and they could not stand the heat. So the guy sleeping, one guy woke up and he ran out. He said, "Oh, house on fire, get out." And the other guy is lying down, like, "Oh, no, no, no." So he's sleeping on one side, fire is burning his back. He turns the other side. Okay. So our spiritual life is like this. We are suffering one way, we just turn the other way. We don't want to get out of the house. So Prabhupada continues. One of the purposes of Lord Krishna's descent or appearance in this material world is to extinguish the fire of material existence for all living entities by setting forth Dharma. So the Lord is so kind, he comes like the nectarian shower, trying to extinguish that forest fire, right? How? By setting forward Dharma, by giving us actually good behavior in living properly. So Prabhupada quotes these verses in the 4th chapter. It is interesting that the first chapter of this book we saw, Prabhupada quote a lot of verses from Bhagavad Gita in the 6th chapter. In the 2nd chapter, Prabhupada is going to quote a lot of verses from the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, series of verses. So he quotes this verse. Yada yada hi dharmasya glane bhavati bharata abhyuttanam adharmasya tadatmanam srajamyaham paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha duskritam dharma samstapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. So here Krishna tells to Arjuna, whenever and wherever there's a decline in religious practice or descendant of Bharata and a predominant rise of irreligion, at that time I descend myself. So why does the Lord come? To deliver the pious, to annihilate the miscreants, as well as to re-establish the principles of religion. I myself appear millennium after millennium. So in this verse, Prabhupada writes, the word dharma is used. This word has been translated into English in various ways. Sometimes it is translated as faith, but according to Vedic literature, dharma is not a kind of faith. Sometimes they say dharma means religion, right? What is your dharma? But no, Prabhupada says faith may change. Today you may be Hindu, tomorrow you can be Muslim, you can be Christian. That's just a faith. But dharma, what we are speaking of in Sanatan Dharma, cannot be changed. Prabhupada gives an example. The liquidity of water cannot be changed. If you call something water, it must be liquid. If it is changed, if for instance water becomes solid, it is actually no longer in its constitutional position. Water in its natural state is liquid, right? Somehow artificial mean it becomes solid. That's no longer it's in its natural position. It is existing under a certain qualifying condition. Our dharma or constitutional position, we means the soul, is that we are part and parcel of the Supreme. And this being the case, we have to dovetail or subjugate our consciousness to the Supreme. We have to submit and connect subjugate. We have to connect our consciousness with the Supreme because we are part and parcel of the Lord. Right? So then Prabhupada continues. This position of transcendental service to the Supreme Whole is being misused due to material contact. So because we are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, we are ultimately meant to serve the Lord. But in this material world, we are misusing the principle of service. Prabhupada explains very nicely. Service is implicit in our constitutional position. So if someone asks, what is the dharma of the soul? What is the ultimate duty of the soul? It is to serve. Prabhupada continues, everyone is a servant and no one is a master. Like Chaitanya Charitamrita says, Ekale Ishvara Krishna Ara Sabha Bhritya. There's only one master, one Ishwar, that is God, and Ara Sabha Bhritya. Everyone else is servant. Everyone is serving someone or other. Although the president may be the chief executive of state, still he is serving the state. And when his services are no longer required, the state disposes of him. Amazing, huh? Prabhupada humbles even presidents, isn't it? So everyone is like that. A taxi driver is serving, a teacher is serving the students, parents are serving children, dog is serving the house, the master is serving the dog. Right? To think to oneself, I am the master of all I survey, is called Maya, illusion. Thus, in material consciousness, our service is being misused under various designations, right? When we become free from these designations, that is to say, when the dust has been cleared from the mirror of the mind, we'll be able to see ourselves in actual position as the eternal servants of Krishna. So this sounds very good theoretically, but many people have an issue, like Prabhupada is going to address in the next paragraph. When you say servant, it somehow seems like a very painful thing. The Prabhupada explains in the next paragraph. One should not think that his service in the material world and his service in the spiritual atmosphere are the same. We may shudder to think, oh, after liberation, I still will be a servant? This is because we have experienced that being a servant in the material world is not very enjoyable, isn't it? When you say you're a servant of something, one feels, oh, government servant, company servant, servant of this. You feel very like downtrodden. But transcendental service is not like this. So therefore, people, when they come to bhakti, when they hear that, Jivera Swarupa hoy Krishnero Nityadas. The Swarupa of the Jiva is the eternal servant of Krishna. The servant is a very painful thing. Because none of us have good experience in this world of being servants. Why? Because the so-called masters in this material world are not good. Right? There's an interesting shloka. This is from Mukunda Mala Stotra, 17th verse. So here, Kulashekar Alwar, he says this beautiful verse. Nate na purushotame trijagatam ekadipe chetasa sevye swasya padasya datari pare narayani tishati yam kanchit purushadamam katipaya gramesham alpartadham sevaye mrgayamahe naramaho mudavarakavayam. He says, Nate na Purushotami. Our master is a Purusha Uttama, the best person. Three Jagatam, these three worlds, Ekadipe Chetasa. He's the one master of three worlds. In this world, what we find, one land has three masters. Right? But the Lord is the one master of the three worlds. Sevyai swasya padasya dhatari pare narayane tishyati. He's such an amazing master that if you serve him, he's willing to give you Vaikuntha also. Take my house, take my ga, take my everything. Which master in this material world will do like that? Nowadays, we see some bosses, they don't even like to share office with people. They don't even share their car with people. But Lord is such a boss, such a master, Natha. that he is willing to give even Vaikunta to the devotee. Yam kanchit purushadamam katipaye gramesham alpartadam. But what's our foolishness? We are so eager to serve the material masters in this world, the so-called masters in this world. For what? Katipaya gramesham, the master of a few villages. But they are not Purushottamam, they are Purusha Adhama, the worst of the people. Sevaye, doing such service, Mrgaya Mahe, like an animal to such people. Mudha, it's foolishness. Varaka, they're like pigs. He says, very heavy. Why am I? He says like that, no, out of humility. So, in the spiritual world, Prabhupada continues, there is no difference between the servant and the master. In this world, there's a big difference, a big gap. Master tries to remain master, push you down as a servant. Spiritual world, master and servant, there is no difference. Why? Servant enjoys as much as the master. Prabhupada gives an example. Here, of course, there is distinction. Here means the material world. But in the absolute world, everything is one. For instance, in Bhagavad Gita, we can see that Krishna has taken the position of servant as the chariot driver of Arjuna. So here's the Supreme Personality of Godhead who becomes a driver for Arjuna. Arjuna is his disciple. Arjuna is his servant. Arjuna is his part and parcel. But here the Lord is becoming servant to the devotee. In his constitutional position, Arjuna is the servant of Krishna. But in behavior, we can see that sometimes the Lord becomes the servant of the servant. We should be careful not to carry materialistic ideas into the spiritual realm. What is materialistic ideas? That a servant suffers, a servant is downtrodden, a servant is foolish, a servant is sad. No. Whatever we have materially experienced is but a perverted reflection of things in spiritual life. Then Prabhupada continues to say, when our constitutional position or dharma is deteriorated due to contamination of matter, the Lord himself comes as an incarnation or sends some of his confidential servitors. So Prabhupada, being very open-minded, broad-minded, he writes like this in the next line. Lord Jesus Christ called himself the Son of God, and so is a representative of the Supreme. Similarly, Muhammad identified himself as a servant of the Supreme Lord. The Prabhupada always says, no? Jesus said he is Son of God. Muhammad says he is servant of God. Here we are presenting you who is God. Krishna says he is God. Right? So Krishna says he is God. Jesus says he is the Son of God. Muhammad says he is a servant of God. But Krishna says, I am God. Thus, whenever there is a discrepancy in our constitutional position, the Supreme Lord either comes himself or sends his representative to inform us of the real position of living entity, according to time, place, and circumstance. Therefore, one should not make the mistake of thinking that dharma is a created faith, right? That's why Prabhupada always says this Krishna conscious movement is a non-sectarian movement. It's not a sect in a sense, because this is Sanatan Dharma. This is the eternal condition or this nature of the soul. All spirit souls are supposed to be chanting Hare Krishna. In its proper sense, dharma cannot be divorced from the living entity at all. Again, Prabhupada comes back to the point that dharma is an intrinsic nature, intrinsic property. It is to the living entity what sweetness is to sugar, right? If you taste something and it's not sweet, how can you call it sugar? Or saltiness is to salt, or solidity is to stone. In no case can it be cut off. Intrinsic property. The dharma of the living entity is to serve. And we can easily see that every living entity has a tendency to serve himself or others. How to serve Krishna? How to disentangle ourselves from materialistic service? How to attain Krishna consciousness and become free from the designations is all taught as a science by Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. So where do we learn this from? From devotees. So Prabhupada goes to the next point to talk about devotees. The word sadhu in this verse quoted above, paritranaya sadhunam, refers to a holy man or a saintly person. A saintly person is tolerant, very kind to everyone, is a friend of all living entities, is no one's enemy, and is always peaceful. There are 26 basic qualities of a holy man. This comes later. And in the Bhagavad Gita, we find that Sri Krishna himself gives the following verdict. So Krishna speaks about who is to consider a sadhu. Apichet suduracharo bhajante mamananya bhav sadureva samantavya samyak vyavasito hi saha. Even if, see how broad-minded is God, huh? Even if one commits the most abominable action, if he's engaged in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly because he is properly situated in his determination. Properly situated means he's in actual constitution of his dharma. So Prabhupada explains this. What do you mean if a person commits abominable action, still is to be considered saintly? On the mundane platform, what is morality for one person is immorality for another. And what is immorality for one person is morality for another. Right? We have seen some examples in this world, like people in Papua New Guinea, they do cannibalism. So the whole world shuns that. But for them, it's moral. Prabhupada gives another example here. According to Hindu conception, the drinking of wine, alcohol, is immoral. Whereas in the Western world, wine drinking is not considered immoral, but it's a common thing. In fact, it's a status thing. You drink wine, you know. So morality is dependent on time, place, circumstance, social position, etc. There is, however, a sense of morality and immorality in all societies. In this verse, Krishna points out that even if one is engaged in immoral acts, but at the same time is fully Krishna consciousness, he is to be considered a sadhu or saint. So we can empathize that this section we are reading, Prabhupada wrote in the budding times of the Krishna conscious movement. Srila Prabhupada is dealing with early disciples who come from various backgrounds, and some of them, if not most of them, had very difficult time actually adapting to high standards of Vedic culture. Some of them were smoking, drinking, so on and so forth. But Prabhupada is saying, whatever it may be, whatever acts you have been doing, whatever it is, come and practice Krishna consciousness. This is your original position. So while practicing Krishna consciousness, you're struggling with that so-called bad habits and bad baggages, still one is to be considered saintly. In other words, although a person may have some immoral habits due to his past association, if he is engaged fully in Krishna consciousness, these habits are not to be considered important. So one big example is one of the leading disciples of Srila Prabhupada, Shyam Sundar Prabhu, who carved the first Jagannath deity. He's a carpenter. He was very good with his hands, but he was smoking as he was doing. And one day while smoking, carving the Balaram's deity, he kept the cigarette on the head of the Lord and started carving. So Srila Prabhupada came and he says, you're doing wonderful work. Then he saw the cigarette. He said, why let this come in between you and the Lord? He just told one line. Shyam Sundar Prabhu immediately understood. Why am I letting a cigarette come in between me and the Lord? And he gave that up. So he went on to preach in London, connected the Beatles, connected George Harrison, and go all over the world. In India, the biggest festivals were all organized by Shyam Sundar Prabhu. He wrote wonderful books now. You can read them, Chasing the White Rhinos, and so many different books on, you can get them on Amazon. Whatever the case, if one becomes Krishna conscious, he will gradually be purified and will become a sadhu. So this whole process of Krishna consciousness is gradual purification of heart. And because a person will become a sadhu, they can be already considered a sadhu. Right? As one progresses in executing Krishna consciousness, his bad habits diminish and he attains to saintly perfection. In this regard, Prabhupada tells a story. There's a story of a thief who went on pilgrimage to a holy town. So this story is about bad habits. And en route, he and the other pilgrims stopped to rest overnight at an inn. Being addicted to stealing, the thief began making plans to steal the other pilgrims' baggage. Then he thought, oh, I am going on a pilgrimage. It does not seem appropriate that I should steal this baggage. No, I shall not do it. Nonetheless, due to his habit, he could not keep his hands off the baggage. So what did he do? So he picked up one person's bag and placed it in another place, and then another person's bag and placed it elsewhere. He spent all night placing different bags in different places, but his conscience bothered him so that he could not take anything from them. In the morning, when the other pilgrims awoke, they looked around for their bags and could not find them. There was a great row, and eventually, one by one, they began to find the bags in various places. After they were all found, the thief explained, gentlemen, I am a thief by occupation. Being that I am habituated to stealing at night, I wanted to steal something from your bags. But I thought that since I am going to this holy place, it is not possible to steal. So I may have rearranged the baggage, but please excuse me. This is a characteristic of a bad habit, Prabhupada says. He does not want to commit the theft anymore, but because he is habituated, sometimes he does. Thus, Krishna says that one who has decided to refrain from immoral habits and make progress in Krishna consciousness is to be considered sadhu, even if out of past habit or by chance he yields, he submits to his fault. So therefore, the determination, right, the rightly situated is most important. Then the following verse, the next verse after this, Apichet Suradharacharo, is this verse. Shipram bhavati dharmatma shashvat shantim negacchati kaunteya prati jani name bhakta pranashyati. Shipram bhavati dharmatma. Such a person becomes dharmic, becomes righteous. He quickly becomes righteous and attains lasting peace. O son of Kunti, declare it boldly that my devotee never perishes. Because one has committed himself to Krishna consciousness, it is proclaimed here by Sri Krishna that within a very short time he will become saintly. So Prabhupada gives a very nice understanding to this. One may pull the plug out of an electric fan, stop the fan, and the fan may still go on even though the juice has been disconnected. This is an American term. Again, early years in America, juice means power. Right? Sometimes you say, oh, the car has no more juice. That means the car has no more power, no oil. Oh, I have just ran out of juice. It means I'm tired, So juice means energy, okay? I hope you know this term. So he said that when you switch off the fan is still going on, even though the juice or the power has been disconnected. But it is understood that eventually the fan will come to stop. So those who have been, all of us who have been committing bad things, but we stop doing bad things, still that momentum which will carry us, carry our consciousness, carry our emotions, it's still there. But eventually, if we don't act on it, it will eventually stop. But it is understood that the fan will come to a stop. Once we take shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna, we turn the switch off for our karmic activities. And although these activities may still revolve, it is to be understood that they will quickly diminish. Okay. It is a fact that whoever takes to Krishna consciousness does not have to endeavor independently to become a good man. Sometimes people try to become good people, separately. No, Krishna consciousness, by practicing Krishna bhakti, slowly one's bad character or nature goes away over time. And without any separate endeavor, one can get all good qualities. So Prabhupada continues to say, all the good qualifications will automatically come. It is stated in Srimad Bhagavatam that one who has attained Krishna consciousness has simultaneously attained all good qualities. On the other hand, if a person is devoid of God consciousness and yet has so many so-called good qualities, his good qualities are to be considered useless, for he will not in any way be prohibited from doing that which is undesirable. So sometimes people have good qualities, they speak very softly, but that is just all due to their conditioning, right? Given a chance, they will do something wrong also, right? They may do something bad also. So this comes from a verse we are looking at the screen. This is 5th canto, 18th chapter, 12th verse. Prahlad Maharaj says this, Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavatya kinchana sarve gunestatra samasate sura harava bhaktasya kuto mahadguna manoratena sati dhavato bahi. So when a person takes up to bhakti, sarve gunai tatra samastate sura. They get all good qualities like demigods. But harava bhaktasya, if they're not devotees of God, they're not devotees of the Lord, kuto mahadguna, where is their good qualities? Because their good qualities are just a mental speculation, right? Like some people, because they're born in very aristocratic families, they are used to being very refined. But still they will go into drinking and smoking, bad things. They will still lie, they will still cheat. But they act very aristocratic. So these good qualities have actually no value because given a chance, right, they will not be prohibited from doing which is undesirable. If one is devoid of Krishna consciousness, he is sure to commit mischief in this world. So then after quoting the initial two verses we saw here in the beginning, Yada Yada Hi Dharmasya, now Srila Prabhupada continues the thread and quotes the following verse after 4.7, 4.8. Now he continues with 4.9. Janma karma cha me divyam evam yoveti tatvatah tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mamiti sorjuna. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activity does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in the material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. So here Prabhupada continues to say, the mission for which Krishna appears is here further explained. When he comes with some mission, there are some activities. Of course, there are some philosophers who do not believe that God comes as incarnation. They say, why should God come to this rotten world? But from the Bhagavad Gita, we understand otherwise. We should always remember that we read the Bhagavad Gita as scripture, and whatever is spoken in the Bhagavad Gita must be accepted. Otherwise, there is no reason in reading it. Because in the West, it's very famous, people read the Bhagavad Gita and then they just don't believe it. So what's the point then you're reading it? In the Gita, Krishna says that he has come as an incarnation with a mission. And along with his mission, there are some activities. We can see, for example, that Krishna is active as chariot driver for Arjuna and engages in so many activities on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Just as when there is war, one person or one nation may side with another person or nation and show partiality, Lord Krishna on the battlefield shows some partiality and sides with Arjuna. Actually, Krishna is not partial to anyone, but externally it appears that he is partial. This partiality, however, should not be accepted in the ordinary sense. So how to understand this? This actually is a verse in Bhagavad Gita 9.29, where Krishna himself says, Samoham sarva bhutesu. I am sama, I am equal to everyone. Samoham sarva bhutesu. Name dvesho sti na priya. I do not envy anyone, I do not favor anyone. But the simple rule is, Ye bhajanti tu mam bhaktya. One who worships me is my devotee. Mai tetesu chapyaham. Naturally, I'm more inclined. So the Lord is reciprocal, right? He is not, how you say, he is not actually taking sides, but he's reciprocal. If one approaches Lord, the Lord favors him. The Lord approaches him. But the Lord's mercy is to everyone, right? So he has mentioned that actually the Lord is not partial to anyone, but because Arjuna was a devotee very close to Krishna's heart, so naturally he was coming to Krishna with love. Krishna reciprocates with him with love. In this verse, Krishna also points out that his descent into the material world is transcendental. Janma karma chami divyam. The word divyam means transcendental. His activities are not in any way ordinary. Even today in India, at the end of August, the people are accustomed to celebrating Krishna's birthday, Janmashtami, regardless of sect. So it's not only the Vaishnavas that celebrate. Everyone in India, whether a person prays to Shiva, Durga, even an atheist, everyone celebrates Janmashtami. Just as in the Western world, Jesus Christ's birthday is celebrated as Christmas, Krishna's birthday is celebrated as Janmashtami, right? And in this verse, Krishna uses the word Janma in referring to my birth. Because there is birth, there is some activities, Janma karma. Krishna's birth and activities are transcendental, which means they are not like ordinary births and activities. So Krishna birth here means Krishna's appearance, because God doesn't born, right? But appears, just like the sun appears from the horizon. One may ask, how is it that his activities are transcendental? He is born, he takes part in battle with Arjuna, he has a father by the name Vasudev, and a mother Devaki, and a family. What can be considered transcendental? Krishna seems so ordinary. Prabhupada says, Krishna says, Evam yo veti tattvataha. One must know that of his birth and activities in truth. So this word tattvataha is very important. This word comes 5 times in Bhagavad Gita in 5 different shlokas. Tattvataha. Tattvataha means scientifically, completely, truth. When one knows of Krishna's birth and activities in truth, the result is Tyaktva deham, when you give up this body, punarjanma na iti, you will not take birth again, mam iti, you will approach me. So Arjuna, when he leaves his material body, he is not born again, but goes directly to Krishna. This means that he becomes a liberated soul. He goes to the eternal spiritual world and attains his constitutional position full of bliss, knowledge, and eternality. That means Sat Chit Ananda. All this can be obtained simply by knowing in truth the transcendental nature of Krishna's birth and activities. Then Prabhupada continues to say about this body compared to ordinary people. One should not think that Krishna's body is ordinary. Ordinarily, when one quits the body, he has to take up another body. After death, there is rebirth. The lives of the living entities are going on simply due to the living entities changing dress, his body, from one body to another. Transmigration of the soul, according to the work of the living entities, according to the karma of the living entities. At the present moment, we may think that this material body is our actual body, but it is like a dress. In reality, we do have an actual body. That's a spiritual body. This material body is superficial compared to the real spiritual body of the living entity. Superficial means it will not last. It's just sometimes there, sometimes not there. When this material body becomes old and worn out, or when it is rendered useless by some accident, right? We put it aside as we may put aside a soiled or ruined suit, cloth, and take up another material body. So when our clothes are torn or destroyed or burnt or horribly spoiled, we throw it away, we wear new clothes. Similarly, when this body, due to some accident or disease or whatever condition, becomes broken, spoiled, or not functionable, then the jiva, the soul, takes up another body. This is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada quotes this verse here. Vasamsi jirnani yata vihaya. So vasamsi means cloth. Jirna means old. So just as a cloth becomes old, vihaya, we throw it away. Then if you throw away clothes, what do you wear? You have to wear something, isn't it? Navani, new. Granati, takes. Naro, parani, he takes another new cloth. Tatha, likewise, sharirani vihaya jirnani, when the body becomes old and invalid, thrown away, vihaya. Anyani samyati navani dehi, and one takes another new body. Very nice example. So Prabhupada says, in the beginning, the body is the size of a pea, right, in the womb. Then it grows to become a baby, then a child, a young boy, a youth, a grown man, an old man. And finally, when it becomes useless, the living entity changes into another body. Living entity means soul, not the body. The body is therefore always changing, and death is simply the ultimate change of the present body, because there's no change after that. So there's another verse that comes in Bhagavad Gita which explains this. Dehinosminyata dehe kaumaram yauvanam jara tatha dehantara praptir dhiras tatra na muhyati. Just like a person changes from kaumaram, meaning boyhood, yauvanam, youthhood, jara, old. So we change from boyhood to youth to old age, but we remain who we are, right? So similarly, after old age, what happens? Next state. Tata deha antara, after that, praptir, he gets a new body after death. So although the body is changing, the dweller within the body remains the same. Okay, that's the soul. Although the boy grows into manhood, the living entity within the body is not changed, right? Our nature, who we are, doesn't change. It is not that the self who was there as a boy has gone away. Medical science agrees that every moment the material body is changing. It is said that after 7 years, the entire body is actually a new body because all cells replenish itself. So after 7 years, it's like you got a new body. Just as living entities are not bewildered by this, an enlightened man is not bewildered when the body undergoes its ultimate change at death. So when we see a small boy now becoming a big man, we are not bewildered by it. We understand. So similarly, an intelligent person, a knowledgeable person in spiritual life, when he sees that the body is getting old, he understands that death will come and the soul will move on. But a person who does not understand these things, they lament, they cry, right? They worry, they sorrow. In the material condition, we are simply changing bodies all the time. That is our disease. It is not that we always change to a human body. Okay. So the problem in the material world, the disease in the material world is we keep changing bodies. It's a very pathetic and sad and tiring. It's imagine if you have a rented house and every 2 months you have to keep changing house. How irritating that is, right? But it's not always that we get a human body. We may change to an animal body or demigod body, depending on our activities. According to Padma Purana, there are 8,400,000 species of life, 84 lakh species of life. We can take on any of them. But Krishna promises that one who knows his birth and activities in truth, tattvata, is freed from the cycle of transmigration. So a very nice photo here. You can see how the eternal cycle, infinity, is going on birth and death to various species, not only human species, animal species, passing through 84 lakh, 8.4 million species. Ultimately, the purpose of life, to finally understand, serve, and love God. Till then, one has to keep transmigrating. So, how does one understand Krishna's birth and activity in truth? This is explained in the 18th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. How to understand about Krishna in truth. Bhaktya mam abhijanati yavan yaschasmi tattvataha. Again, tattvataha. Tato mam tattvato jnatva vishate tat anantaram. Krishna says, one can understand me as I am, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, only by devotional service, bhakti. And when one is in full consciousness of me by such devotion, he can enter into the kingdom of God. Prabhupada says, again, here the word tattvata in truth is used. One can understand the science of Krishna in truth by becoming a devotee. He who is not a devotee, who does not strive for Krishna consciousness or God consciousness, cannot understand. At the beginning of the 4th chapter also, Krishna tells Arjuna, right, that he is explaining this ancient science of yoga to him because Arjuna is my devotee and friend. So let us look at that verse 1 minute. Here it mentions, Bhakto sime saka cheti, sa evayam maya tedhya yoga prokta puratana. Bhakto sime, you're my devotee, saka, and you're my friend. Rahasyam, I'm telling you this rahasya, this secret. Etat uttamam. For one who simply makes an academic study of Bhagavad Gita, the science of Krishna remains a mystery. The Bhagavad Gita is not a book that one can just purchase from the bookstore and understand by scholarship alone. Arjuna was not a great scholar, nor a Vedantist, nor a philosopher, nor a Brahmana, nor a renunciant. He was a family man, a military man. But still, Krishna selected him to be the recipient of Bhagavad Gita and the first authority in the disciplic succession. Why? Because you are my devotee. That is the qualification to understand the Bhagavad Gita as it is and Krishna as he is. One must become Krishna conscious. So we tell people that you're studying Prabhupada books, you're reading, you want to learn about spiritual life. At the same time, chant Hare Krishna. Chanting Hare Krishna means we're trying to become a devotee. Then the subject matter can be understood. Prabhupada says, what is this Krishna consciousness? That is the process of cleansing the dust from the mirror of the mind, like how we began this chapter. Through the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. By chanting this mantra and by hearing the Bhagavad Gita, we can gradually attain to Krishna consciousness. Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam. Krishna is always present within our heart. The individual soul and the super soul are both sitting in the tree of the body. The individual soul, Jiva, is eating the fruit of the tree, and the super soul, Paramatma, is witnessing. The same analogy we saw last chapter as well. So I could not show you the photo then, but here, the Jiva bird is simply eating, trying to enjoy this body. The Paramatma bird is just simply watching. It's a nice analogy that comes in 2 Upanishads, Mundaka Upanishad and Shvetashvatara Upanishad. This analogy of how in the heart, we are sitting and the Paramatma is also sitting. We and the super soul and super soul are sitting. The soul wants to enjoy this body. We are trying to enjoy this body. Paramatma, the Lord is just watching. When will you look at me? When are you going to turn your face here? As the individual soul begins the process of devotional service and gradually begins to develop his Krishna consciousness, the super soul who is seated within begins to help him dust all the impurities from the mirror of the mind. Krishna is a friend to all saintly persons, and the attempt to become Krishna conscious is a saintly endeavor. Very beautiful line. Krishna is a friend to all saintly person, and the attempt to become Krishna conscious is saintly endeavor. Shravanam Kirtanam. By chanting and hearing, one can come to understand the science of Krishna and thereby come to understand Krishna. And upon understanding Krishna, one can, at the moment of death, go immediately to his abode in the spiritual world. The spiritual world is described in Bhagavad Gita. So if you want to go back home, back to Godhead, we need to know where that spiritual world is. That is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita. Natat bhasayate suryo na shashanko na pavaka yat gatva na nivartante tad dhama paramam mama. My supreme abode the supreme abode of mind is not illuminated by the sun or the moon, nor by fire or electricity. Those who reach it never return to this material world. The material world is always dark, and therefore we require sun, moon, electricity. The Vedas enjoin us not to remain in this darkness, but to transfer ourselves to the world of illumination, the spiritual world. The word darkness has twofold meaning. It not only means without light, but means ignorance. So darkness means ignorance. The Supreme Lord has manifold energies. It is not that he comes to the material world to perform activities. It is stated in the Vedas that the Supreme Lord has nothing to do, right? He has no material activity. Bhagavad Gita, Krishna also says, Na me partasti kartavyam trishu lokeshu kinchana nanavaptam abhaptavyam varta eva chakarmani. O son of Pritha, Arjuna, there is no work prescribed for me within all the three planetary systems. Nor am I in want of anything, nor have I need to obtain anything. So don't think that Lord, that he needs our prayers. Lord needs to come to this world. No. And yet I am engaged in prescribed duties. Still the Lord very mercifully acts. We should therefore not think that Krishna is required to descend upon this material world and engage in so many activities. No one is equal to or greater than Krishna. Asama urdhva, it is said in Sanskrit. And he has all knowledge naturally. It is not that he has to undergo penances to acquire knowledge, or that he, at any time, has to receive knowledge or attain knowledge. Some people say that God also has to come to learn. No, Krishna knows everything. At all times, in all conditions, he is full of knowledge. He may be speaking the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, but at no time was he ever taught the Bhagavad Gita, isn't it? One who can understand that this is Krishna's position does not have to return to the cycle of birth and death in this material world. Being under the influence of illusion, we spend our lifetimes trying to make adjustments to this material atmosphere. But that is not the purpose of human life. Human life is meant for understanding the science of Krishna. So in our lives, we make so much adjustments. We try to adjust our living situation, our language, our finance, try to adjust this, that, job. But ultimately, the goal of life is not for these material adjustments, but is to understand the science of Krishna, Krishna Tattva. Our material needs are these: the problem of eating, mating, sleeping, defending. In Mahabharata, the shloka comes, Ahara Nidra Bhayam Maitunam, and of acquiring sense gratification. These are common both to human and animals. Samanyam etat Pashubir Naranam. The animals are busily engaged in trying to solve these problems. And if we are also only engaged in trying to solve these problems, where to get food, where to live, where to mate, where to defend, then are we any different from the animals? The human being, however, has a special qualification. Dharmo ki tesham adhike vishesho, whereby he can develop transcendental Krishna consciousness. So the only adhika vishesham, the extra special thing which humans have, is the capability, the ability to practice dharma, our real dharma. But if he does not avail himself to this, he is in the animal category. If one simply does eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. The defect of modern civilization is that it puts too much stress on solving these problems, right? If you look at it, the whole world, our studies, our economy, it's all based on this four principles: eating, sleeping, mating, defending. How to eat better, how to sleep better, how to mate better, how to defend better, have bigger houses, bigger cars, safety, 7 airbags, 3 airbags in the car, As spiritual living beings, it is incumbent upon us to extricate ourselves from this entanglement of birth and death. It's a must. We should therefore be careful not to miss the special opportunity of human life. Sri Krishna himself comes to deliver the Bhagavad Gita and to help us to become God conscious. Indeed, this very material creation is given to us to utilize for this cultivation. What is the purpose of this material world? To cultivate Krishna consciousness. But if after receiving this chance and this gift of human life, because only human life we can think, we can attend a Zoom meeting and hear and read, we do not utilize them to develop Krishna consciousness, we shall be missing this rare opportunity. The process for cultivation is very simple. Shravanam Kirtanam, hearing and chanting. We have nothing to do other than listen, and by listening carefully, enlightenment is sure to come. Krishna will surely help, for he is seated within heart. We only have to make the effort and spare a little time. Right? We will not need anyone to ask us whether we are making progress. We will know it automatically, just as a hungry man knows that he has been satisfied by a full meal. If you're very hungry, you eat something, you know you're satisfied. Similarly, we practice Krishna Bhakti, we will know for ourselves the difference. Actually, this process of Krishna conscious of self-realization is not very difficult. Krishna taught it to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. And if we understand the Bhagavad Gita just as Arjuna did, we will have no problem in coming to the perfectional stage. But if we try to interpret the Bhagavad Gita according to our mundane academic mentality, we spoil it. As stated before, this chanting of Hare Krishna is a process by which all contaminations due to material association are removed from the mirror of the mind. There is no need for external help in reviving our Krishna consciousness. For Krishna consciousness is dormant within the self. Krishna consciousness, Krishna Bhakti is the natural state of all jivas, all living beings. In fact, it is the very quality of self. We have only to invoke it by this process. Krishna consciousness is an eternal fact. It is not a doctrine or set of beliefs imposed by some organization. It is within all living entities. So it's Dharma, whether they be human being or animal. When Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was passing through the jungles of South India some 500 years ago, he chanted Hare Krishna. Actually, this is the jungles in Bihar and Jharkhand. He chanted Hare Krishna, and all the animals, the tigers, elephants, deers, joined him in dancing to the holy names. Because they were all Jivatmas, everyone is a living being. Of course, this depends on the purity of chanting. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is God himself, so he can make them chant. As we progress in chanting, purification is sure to come. So like this, we see the importance of chanting, especially in knowing Krishna, right? So like this, we complete the second chapter. I would like to request devotees, we will put some questions on the group. You can try to answer them. And you can also share maybe some favorite lines from this chapter, one-liners of Srila Prabhupada, which you found very hitting. You can share them on the group. That will be inspiring to all. Thank you all so much for your participation. And we will meet now next session. Hare Krishna.